let's start with Ron. Ron Marasco is joining us from Kent. Hi, Ron.
Hi, how are you folks?
Doing great. Ron, give us a... Oh, nice. Ron, give us a brief synopsis of the creative and inspiring theatrical life of Ron, and how it's affected you in any way, as far as how you're doing now and in your philosophy, how the COVID is affecting you as well.
Well, I always had a bit of a kind of eclectic life because I was partially a professor. I was a professor for 27 years and at times chair of the theater department at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles. But I was also, because of being in Los Angeles, I was a working actor and I worked all the time. So I think if I say eclectic, I have a mixed sense of things in that I have a deep appreciation for literature, for learning, for the liberal arts and what it means, for language, for history. But I also love entertainment. I love show business. And I have seen both the positive things of a university and the negative things in terms of their understanding of preparing people for an actual career. Being in front of a camera, for example. I found that in academic life, I find that a lot of the theater departments are over here and the film departments are over there. And there's not a kind of synergy which there really could and should be. So that was something that I was always fascinated by. And so when I left university life, which really was mainly to just come back to this area where all my family was, I began working with people just individually and seeing what could you do individually or coaching in a coaching situation that you really couldn't do in an acting class. And an awful lot of, I think there's an issue or a problem. It's that much of what is taught to people in acting programs is not readily usable in say a film shoot, for example. You do a lot of, say, physical warm-ups, you might do fencing, you might do certain kind of vocal training, you do all different kinds of things, improv, scene study, but I don't know how much of that is directly relatable for an actor to say, I learned something in this class today that if I go for an audition for a TV show, I'm directly going to be able to use it. So I began to think of coaching as really that, of being a bridge between all that they're learning. And it's wonderful, all that they're learning, because you never know what the director's going to be. You may have a director that the first day says, we're going to do improv. Well, you better be ready to do improv. You may have a director that says, we're going to go through this text with a fine-tooth comb. You may have a director that's going to say, tell me the saddest thing that ever happened to you sitting around the table. So you got to be fleet, supple, adjustable, and ready. And that's the value of having a very eclectic training. But what I wasn't finding were actors that could take what they were learning and immediately translate that into the actual very specific work that they were going to do at an audition, and more importantly, in working in an actual, on television in particular. I mainly did television, being in Los Angeles. That was just the world there. And I actually think it's very good training for people, television. A lot of actors that we love and who have had great careers, if you look early on, they've had a long stint on a TV show, 3 or 4 years. And that training, which is not only about the specifics of a film set, but the specifics of their body on camera, their specifics of what of their training is usable or not usable in a shoot where you're filming a page and a third and there's high pressure and you're coming in and you're not allowed to have necessarily time with some of the other actors who may be on the TV show when you're doing a 1 or 2 or 3 day kind of a thing. So I felt that there was wonderful aspects of college training, but there was a wire missing. And it was maybe the most important wire in a way. So that's what I began to really concentrate on. So in terms of what has happened over the last, few months with all of these changes, I, like you, feel, Robin, it's just been not that different for me because I had been away from doing the actual classes like that. I communicate with people in a sort of one-on-one way. In terms of the theater as a whole, what I would like to see is, I think there's, of course, the gallantry of theater people, and they're endlessly resourceful, and they're keeping the light lit, as the name of this show says. But they like to be busy, and they like to be engaging with each other, and that's a plus. But there's another opportunity here, which is because people are not performing, you get a chance to maybe go deeper than you ever would in a 6-week rehearsal period. I taught a class at LMU, it was one of my favorite classes, and it was, we're going to do a play, but never do it. And what we did was we would work on it absolutely as if we were going to do it. I'm not saying it was fully designed, but we would rehearse, we would prepare, we would block, but we would never do it in front of an audience, and we never did it. And that was a rule. So we knew we were never going to do it. And I'll tell you, something wonderful was yielded from that, because we do have a hamishness and a self-consciousness, and we want our friends to like us. And that's not where the great acting comes from. Great acting comes when you get lost in those circumstances, when you get swept away. And when that happens to you, it's so much better than anybody liking you, clapping for you, or anything, when you have that experience. And so now, while maybe we don't have the ability to get up there and do stuff and be in tech and do shows and put it up in front of people, maybe there's a time to work on something for a year. Remember, we all come from this tradition. I actually studied for a period of time at the Moscow Art Theater, and we all come from this Stanislavskian tradition. And these were people that lived together, worked on a play for a year. They allowed it to marinate. They allowed it to be infused with each other's spirit. And yes, we don't have an audience necessarily right now, or money or budgets or anything, but we have each other. We have all of this great literature. We have all of this immense talent. So sometimes maybe it's just about grabbing something off the shelf and either working on it yourself or working on it with a couple of people, and maybe going in deeper than you ever would have been able to go, more generously, in a way, where you're really just giving yourself over to the material. So I think something like that could be a really, really cool thing. Not that you're going to do a reading or get it up on its feet, but that you go throughout this whole thing. We're going to work on A or B or C together, and just see what happens when you take the audience away. And it is just you and your character and your talent and literature, and maybe sometimes literature that you're not able to, maybe you wouldn't be able to do a play. So I'd like to see a little bit more of that. There's a lot of things that are being done to do them, and they can sometimes have a feel of superficiality to it, So that would be my hope or my suggestion for this time.
Just a sort of question on some of that. Given that we don't know when things are going to go back to the way they were, or even if things are going to go back to the way they were at the the same level that they were, how is that affecting the work you do with actors? Are you starting to think of a new paradigm for the way that they might need to work, or how's that going?
I think it's a very good question, and I'll answer it very simply. I always paid attention to the very definite optics of how close you are to somebody. And what I would do in many of my classes is I would do a scene where people would sit in the back row of the theater. And then later on, we would work on that same scene. And I would literally have people sit around on the set with the actors, because it was a way to work on what happens if the audience is there or what happens if it's here. Oddly, most acting classes happen in a middle ground, which is wrong. Meaning you're too close to train for theater because you're in a small sort of studio, but you're not close enough to have it work for film. So almost every acting class in America is in a sort of wrong-sized situation, I think, where you would either be, you're on that stage and the audience is sitting in the back row, so you understand how to pitch things to there, or people are sitting around you here and they're right at the stage. And you're teaching people that, what I always used to say was, when you're on a camera should be like a person. So I should think of this camera when I'm working on a camera, like you're sitting across the table from me. But then if you're in the theater, I used to say the audience is the camera. So when you're in film, the camera is a person, but when you're in the audience, if I have 200 seats, I say I have 200 cameras going, and you don't know which feed is going to Steven Spielberg's casting person.
Right.
So you start to have a sense of saying, I know how to pitch this to an entire room and sort of make it look effortless. So I was sort of always working on that kind of accordioning. Sometimes people would work on a scene like this, and then other times they would be in a larger situation. So I was always interested in that. But now, of course, you have a great opportunity to do that because you have this film mechanism. And so while you can't do normal theater stuff, instead of saying, to be able to work with an actor and be this close on something and have somebody be able to do to be or not to be like this, instead of belting it out, starts to give actors a chance to use so many different aspects of themselves. So in terms of this, I would say embrace this, pull it in. Let's use it while we're stuck with it. We all want to be back up on stage, but while we have this, maybe it's a chance to learn what can come from that.
We've certainly heard that
all the time. Just say to somebody, whisper it in someone's ear. Just whisper the monologue in their ear. It changes everything. So maybe this smallness and closeness is a good thing.
Well, certainly, in one of our early sessions, we certainly heard that, but we heard it maybe more as a hope than as positively as you're putting it. It was that people were finding out that no, they had to adjust the way they taught to fit this box. Because whoever you're working with is in the home,
right?
So
right.
Make the scene work for the home, for where you are at home. Make it work for whatever you've got in front of you. So that's again, seems to be a common theme that's running through this.
If it's what we are dealing with, it's what we're dealing with. The issue is, the other thing this teaches you is how much do you depend upon pure adrenaline to act. And what happens when you don't have adrenaline? And I got news for people. You don't have that much adrenaline on a film set.
No.
Al Pacino said he loves danger. And he said, working on a film, it's like the difference between being a tightrope walker or walking a line that's been painted on the floor. So, what a lot of theater people have to go, oh God, I was Hamlet. The audience was thrilled. They were on the edge of their seat. I could feel it. I could hear it. They were cheering. Then all of a sudden you go, boom, you can do that same scene. There's a bunch of grips having a sandwich. And then at some point they're going to say, all right, now let's do it. No one's going to do anything to make you get there.
Yeah.
So that's another thing, is because sometimes people may go, oh my God, I don't know that I can act without adrenaline. How do I
Yeah.
a whole other set of stuff that you have to work on. So
it sounds as though again another thing that's kind of bubbled along is that if we're faced with without live performance in front of an audience for a while, will there be actors and types of actors who rise to, you know, who find themselves in a position where their particular skills are in demand?
I think so. I think a lot of people that have been in theater departments know that a lot of times the big person in the theater department never did anything much in film and television. And a lot of times somebody came along that they're like in a whole bunch of things, like, we didn't really pay attention to this person. But they had something that read in a different kind of a way, and they were able to use that. And there's a technical aspect to figuring it out. The Brits are very good at it because they're not afraid to be like technical. They're not afraid to have somebody say, no, do it like 2 notches quieter. Where in America, we feel like, oh, I have to explain it and I can't tell you that or how to. They say 2 notches quiet. Brits go 2 notches quiet. Okay, I'll do it 2 notches quieter. No, that's 3 notches. Oh, okay, I'll take it up a notch. So there's something about that ability to do that. That doesn't undermine our creativity. It doesn't a musician, it wouldn't undermine. If you said, no, do it, hold it 1 more second. Nobody would be like, how dare you tell me how to play my instrument? We'd say, I can do that instrumentation, but I could also put feeling and life in it, you know? And I think sometimes we lean a little bit away. It's gotten a bad rap, some of that technical stuff. Well, the Brits are very, very good at that. They understand. I'm going to just tell one quick story that was one of the greatest things I ever heard about acting. And when George Clooney was originally got known for being on the TV show ER. And so it's another example of somebody that did a long stint on a TV show. And Steven Spielberg knew somebody that was on the show and visited the set one day. He didn't know George Clooney. And he watched him work. And he pulled George Clooney aside and he said to him, you know, you could be a movie star if you stop moving your head around so much. Now, that seems like, huh, what a ridiculous, but watch George Clooney. Watch how he can be on that screen, 2 stories high, the stillness, the peace, the ease, how he draws you to him, how he doesn't do too much. Watch in movies how the star moves much less than the character do.
Yeah.
That's when you point that out, it's fascinating. And again, you know, we may be faced with this as a medium or some development of this as a medium for a while, and maybe those other people who will rise. So yeah, Robin, do you want to?
Yeah, I wanted to check in with Ron on one thing. First of all, Ron, you there?
Yeah.
Okay, Ron. So you're giving me permission to do Chekhov without an audience. All right, we're doing it.
I'm working on something right now, which is just a Zoom experience with Uncle Vanya.
Oh my God. So what's amazing is the first thing I thought of when you were talking about that was Vanya on 42nd Street.
Perfect.
If you ever saw the film, and I suggest everybody watch that film now. It is extremely apropos. Wally Shawn is amazing. And what they did was, and this was an anniversary, they went every year. And in '97, they filmed it in the, I don't know, do you know the name of the theater they filmed it in?
I think it might have even been like the New Amsterdam. It might have been something like that.
Beautiful,
falling apart.
Falling apart, beautiful. So incredible set they didn't have to do anything with, right? And they're just, in the beginning, if you remember, they're just having some nosh, and then they sit down and they start the scene, and it's there, and there's some people that are watching. And the people that are watching, you'll see in one of the scenes, is sitting around the table,
right,
that Sarah Bakoff and Yelena are talking at.
See,
And
the power of that, I think, you bring up a point, maybe because we have to keep people in separate areas,
right.
maybe you can do more environmental things.
Yeah.
That if you say two people sit in the living room and they can look here through this scene, and two people sit at the top of the stairs, and this entire thing might be happening around them if you were able to work it out,
Right. And imagine the Ibsen plays with the little vignettes going on,
Sure.
little chair by chair,
And the audience could wear masks.
duos. Yep.
The audience could wear masks, and it would be a way you could definitely make sure no actor got within 6 feet of some. So you could do something very enterprising. Years ago, there was a play in Los Angeles called Tamara. Look it up, Robin, because it was a Gabriel D'Annunzio play, and the big gimmick was they went from room to room to room to room, and you sort of follow. So something like that kind of stuff could maybe be, incredible. Maybe you don't watch one scene, you have to listen to the scene in the room, in the parlor, but then the dining room scene you're there for. So,
it's not a moneymaker. There's not hordes of people coming in, but I think that you're going to get to the heart of Chekhov. I mean, if you do something like that, you're going to get what you're talking about. You're getting to the heart of the playwright.
They started doing some stuff like this in LA. I want to say Wallace Shawn might have done some of this. And I think even actors like, I want to say maybe Zoe Caldwell had done something like this before she died, where there were only 30 people in the audience.
Right.
That's more or less a full house for us.
But in New York, I mean, you could do something.
Yeah, we
did something.
Yes.
They bought up, and that was the 10 people, and 10 friends sat there and watched a play.
Well, that's an off Broadway theater, anyways. I mean,
it could be an incredible experience, and especially here where there's room. There's barns and churches and all different kinds of odd things that nobody would ever think to use.
I know. It's always coming. It's always churning around.
It is churning around, and as my role now is of president of the Sherman Playhouse, and my thoughts are always turning to how can we produce something. So the mechanics of things are sort of high in my mind. So Robin, should we move along?
We'll move on.
Thanks very much, Ron. Don't
go
anywhere.
I won't. I'm here.
Yeah, don't go anywhere. I'm gonna mute you. There we go.
That was great stuff. Let's move over to Kit. Speaking of local theater and our dealings with it during this part. Are you there, Kit?
Okay, we'll need you to unmute, Kit. Can you find the mute button? There you go. We've got you. Hooray.
Your dialogue box was on top of what I had to click on. So.
Oh, well, there you go. Sorry, sorry about that.
Before you ask me anything, I just wanted to talk to a couple of points that Ron made about site-specific theater, which has been done in the Hudson Valley all over the place. There was a theater up in the Catskills that did Hay Fever as a site-specific piece long before COVID. They didn't have a space yet, so they used the director's house, and they actually did the scenes in the dining room, the living room, the bedroom, wherever they could go, and the audience followed them from place to place. It was brilliant. And then the same director did a series of one acts in the city, and rather than bore the audience with having to do a set change before one piece and the next, they had all the pieces set up in this cavernous church, so the audience could travel and follow and just go to the next spot where the piece was being performed, and it worked really well. And that was naturally distanced. I mean, it just was. So
medieval drama. You got the Stations of the Cross from pageant wagon to pageant wagon. It's been done, and that's all outside. They're not doing the Renfest, but I understand why. Yeah, it's great stuff. So Kit, give us a bit about yourself and what you're doing now and how it's being affected.
I'm not doing much now, but I serve on the board of a theater here in Wappingers Falls called County Players. We have a 400-seat venue that we own outright, and we shut down our production of Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum in March, which was halfway through rehearsing, and I mean, it was cooking, and as did most theaters, we have been hunkered down figuring out what to do next and how to do it. We basically canceled most of the season, actually postponed most of the season to go into the same slots next year.
Right.
I am scheduled to direct a George M. Cohan piece called 7 Keys to Baldpate, which not many people know about, but it was written in 1917, and it's a door-slamming mystery farce. That's the only way I can describe it. And so that would, ideally, it would be cast in November and go up in February, but everything's in question right now. I am actually on the reopening committee for the same theater, and we have been wrestling with some very interesting technical questions and health questions, and we are trying to at least open the theater for administrative purposes, and we have to go through the very formal rigmarole with the state for that, just to be able to keep tabs on the building, make sure everything is running fine and
Right.
stuff like that. So it's been interesting. I did do a, I was going to say a Zoom production, but a StreamYard production of the Laramie Project months ago, which was very interesting. The whole process was interesting. We rehearsed in Zoom format so we could all see each other. And then the producers decided to use StreamYard for the actual performance, because the producers could then control how many actors they had on the screen at any given time. If it was 2 actors in the scene, those 2 actors were on. And you didn't have to see everybody else, and everybody else didn't have to be on, while the other actors were.
Yeah, like we all know.
Yeah, and it worked really well, except for the fact that I had an actor's nightmare. My internet went down in the middle of the play. So extreme panic, a lot of 4-letter words off screen, and we came back on. But these are the realities of producing things like this. You have no control over certain elements, certain production values that we're all having to rely on. So it's been an eye-opener in that regard.
So Kit, this is kind of an odd question, sort of off the mark, but you're a real estate agent, and I think your business has picked up. I'm a little bit.
Everybody in the city wants to live in the Hudson Valley now, or Connecticut, or whatever.
Or Connecticut, yeah.
And so it's been extraordinary. I put a listing on day before yesterday, and I've had 15 showings and 2 offers already.
Wow.
So we go to what we call highest and best, and then it's a free-for-all. You just present your best offer and we decide. But I mean, it's extraordinary in that regard. People have figured out that they can work from home like this, like what we're doing right now. I mean, it's just easy.
Right.
And we get our funds. So that's changed a lot.
Yeah. I think we filled up our gas tank about 5 times in the last 6 months.
If that.
That's right. That's right. Kit, I mean, you sell yourself a little short, I think, because you're what you're doing now in terms of local theatre and your involvement with reopening committees and administration of theatres is a small part. I know it's a small part of your experience. We chatted a while ago for one of our interviews at the Playhouse on about your career, and you've basically been there, done that with a lot of different elements of performing, haven't you? I mean, you told me of your time on the cruise ships as a stoker, I think, in the boiler room, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was it.
That was it. And also you've done quite a few commercials and TV spots and things like that. I'm not sure how much you've done on film, but I believe you have done some stuff on film as well. So your experience of all of that, and especially I want to talk about the cruise ships.
Why?
not necessarily about your specific high stepping or whatever you were doing, but just what's your take on how cruise ships and cruise ship entertainment is likely to fare in all this, given that at the minute cruise ships are seen as plague bearing ships rather than places of entertainment and vacation.
Yeah, Typhoid Mary and all that.
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, it's all that's going to depend on the cruise ship industry itself. I really have no idea. When I was involved, it was a hell of a lot of fun at a young age and traveling to places I couldn't afford to see at that time. Otherwise, so I mean, just like any theater, a cruise ship now, the cruise ship theater, the venues are enormous. They're just as big as my 400 seat, whatever. They're bigger than that. So the distance between the performers and the audience is no problem. I was actually reading the state of Ohio directives on theater reopening, and the things they were talking about. Musicians must wear a mask, but they can cut a slit in the mask if they are using a mouth instrument. I mean, it's just the specifics are amazing. Actors would have to be 15 feet away from the first audience member. Actors must wear a mask for all the performance, except when they have a very intimate scene face to face. The actors will be tested X amount of times. Everybody will, it's just logistically nightmarish. But it does seem, when you read a document like that, it does seem actually feasible that we could actually do theater again in normal formats inside eventually. I saw a performance here in Rhinebeck of a chorus line a few weeks ago, and they did Midsummer Night's Dream a few weeks before that on their newly built outdoor stage, just a 8-inch platform outside, and then they had a large lawn that people could sit on, and all the performers wore identical masks that were like a strip across here, a strip under the chin, and acrylic across here. So you could see their faces, you could see what they were doing, but chorus line is a big dance, so they were exerting themselves and breathing heavily, and the play was fogging up.
Yes, I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, but for some of the solo songs and solo monologue, individuals on stage delivering or speaking to the director from the back, they were able to take their mask off, and you had the full-on experience of being in theater where you actually get to see the entire person doing the piece, and that was very rewarding. And I know that the performers felt very gratified to be able to do that. The audience loved it. They sold out, but because they could only have 50 audience members at a time.
Right.
State mandate. So that limited things quite a bit, and that's going to limit all theaters' take on any individual production unless they extend the run and have
and even then the challenge or the question that we're facing certainly at the Playhouse is will people come, and will people, what type of performance and production do we need to mount to get people to come, and do we need to mount the sort of performance that would get that wouldn't necessarily appeal to the older audience who might be afraid to come, so there's a lot of logistics involved in that. And so the Connecticut, I read the indoor events mandate from Connecticut, and that's a maximum of 25 people in a venue. So,
regardless of the size of your house?
yeah, regardless of the size of your house. They were talking about 50%, but then when I read further down, it said 25. So it just makes it a challenge. Doesn't mean you can't do things,
No.
but if you want to mount a production, which is a real production, and not a half-assed job, then
Right.
you've really got to think that through. So that's the position we're in. I'm pretty certain it's the same position that you're in with your theatre. So
Right. Our president's been making some calls and talking to subscribers who are largely older people, and they were saying, we love you guys. We can't wait to come back, but we're not going to come back yet.
yeah,
I think they're waiting for a vaccine. They're waiting for a guaranteed therapy or something. So
yes, yeah, and so yeah, we're all in that position. But it does sound, again, the technology is there to be able to stage things if we're willing to stage things in different ways.
Yeah.
And to Ron's point, we've got to be thinking of innovative ways to produce these things, and maybe this is an opportunity for innovation. Maybe out of this, something new will arise, which will become a mainstream approach. But well, thanks very much, Kit. I think we'll move on to Lena now. So don't go anywhere, Kit. Lena, you're on mute at the moment, so you can unmute yourself. There we go. We know each other because I could be very grand and say Lena's my agent. Lena is a casting director and owner of a successful casting agency in the city. She's found me a few good things to work on, and certainly I think has worked in the same kind of region that Kit. You've worked on commercials and training spots and all that kind of stuff as well. It's that type of thing that I've been involved in, but I know you're involved in more than that, Lena. So if maybe you can give us a bit of your background, how you've got to where you are, and how things are working for you now in your business. I'm really excited to hear from sort of the business side of the industry, and as to what you're experiencing, and also what you're hearing from other people in your industry, and the talent and crews that you're dealing with as well. So over to you, Lena.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Lena Kaminsky. Thanks for having me. Great to hear you, Ron and Kit. Okay, let's see. It's such a crazy time. It's just so crazy. It's funny, like just to something you were saying, Ron. I recently this week was invited to go to a showcase for a class that a friend was teaching, an actor I know, and for kids, little kids. They were like, I don't know, it was just a few kids, but and we had to give feedback after. And I was like really in awe of what their camera technique was. They were doing monologues, they were doing musical numbers, but I was like, wow, like you guys know how to work this camera, in a really grounded way. Like they were still, like you were saying. And then I was like, wow, that's what they're growing up with. This is what they do all the time. They have social media. I mean, I didn't grow up with that. So this is what they are used to doing, is looking into a camera. I would have been I wouldn't have known what to do when I was that age, I would have been, like I think of the monologue I did to get into college, and I think I was like, overacting I mean, I was like, everything wrong. So I just thought it was really interesting, and I just thought I would mention that because I thought, oh wow, like, kids today they're used to this. They're used to this format. They're used to you know, talking to the camera. So I just thought that was an interesting thing, and it just popped into my head. So just like a brief little bit about me, I let's see, I went to school for acting. I'm also an actor. I went to Emerson College. I got my BFA in acting. Um, did a lot of breathing and physical work. um, and then when I got out of school, I moved to Chicago. I lived in Chicago for a while and did theater there. Bounced around a little bit, like did summer stock and stuff. And then I moved back to New York, where I'm from. And I, when I first moved back to New York, I did like a children's theater tour out of George Street Playhouse in New Jersey, and it was a full year. It was my first job that I got in New York, and when I finished that tour, I was like, now what do I do? Um, I think I was extremely not prepared for the real world, like how you were saying, Ron. Like when from college, like I just like had no idea. I had no idea what to do when I graduated college. I didn't even know I was supposed to staple my picture to my resume. Like I didn't know very, very basic things. Um, Luckily, my sister is also an actor, so and she's older than me, so she taught me a lot of stuff. And so then when I finished that job, I needed another job. And funny, so my sister was working for a casting director that she had auditioned for, that she reached out to and said, "You're really nice. Do you ever need help in your office?" And this woman, her name is Carol Nadell. Um, and she owned Selective Casting, which I now own. That's like a spoiler, I guess. But my sister was going out of town to do a regional gig, and I replaced my sister working for Carol, and we really hit it off in this way. Like we just had a very kind of similar way of thinking, and I got introduced to the world of casting, which I didn't even really know was a thing, to be honest with you. But I ended up like kind of, you know, long story short, I worked with Carol for over 10 years, and I became her assistant and then her associate. And, you know, she loved that I was an actor and that I primarily have done like I do everything like we all do, but I've primarily I have done regional theater, and you know, she loved that I would like go out of town and meet these actors and bring actors for her to meet, and I loved it. I loved getting actors work. Um, I always loved that, and I loved being in the room with actors. And Carol was an actor and was kind of notorious for like actors loved her. Like she made actors feel really comfortable in this way. She, you know, respected them and really had like very small casting sessions in the way that like uh, everyone that she brought in, she knew everyone was pre-screened. It was like a very old school way of working in a commercial, and we were on the commercial end. She primarily did industrials. You know, some commercials here and there, but primarily industrials, smaller films we would do. Industrials used to be a very different thing than they are now, which I can get to, but which everyone here probably knows that. But anyway, so I really loved it, and I balanced these kind of two things. Um, and Carol used to always say like good actors know good actors, and I really believe that. I really, you know, I just had like a 2-hour conversation with a friend of mine the other day where she gave me like I was working on a casting, and I'm like, I want to pick your brain about this because you'll know, you know, people here. And she just gave me a list, and you know, people I knew, people I didn't know, and there's so many actors, there's so many talented actors, and like I just feel like I always want to meet people, you know. I always want to I don't know, see people work and stuff. So anyway, let's see. Carol is how old? She's older. She sort of became like she doesn't like our families became close. She hangs out with my parents, and like I can't say she's my second mother because she's like, you have a mother, but she was like my aunt or something, you know. She's part of my family, and when she was thinking about retiring, she asked me if I would take the business, and I said no. I said no. I was like, I am an actor. And it's funny because when Carol tells her story, and her story is really interesting because there weren't really casting directors when she got into the business. So she started in, you know, the 80s, in the early 80s. And it used to be you would bring your picture to like the secretary or whatever, and they would bring your picture to, you know, and Carol instinctually like someone in the corporate world knew that she knew that knew her, knew she knew actors, and asked could she gather some people together and bring them down, bring in and give them, you know, give them names. And she instinctually went with the actors to the office, and that was like her first session. That's long story short there, but anyway, but when someone said, "Oh, you should be a casting director," she said, "I'm an actor. I'm not. I don't want to do that." So she said, "Oh, I want you to have my business," and I was like, "Oh, no. I already hustle so much for work, and I can't do that and that." And then my life sort of flipped around, and unexpected things happened to me, and I ended up in a big life change, and then I started kind of taking on some other work. Like Carol had kind of retired and like was just sort of like taking in little jobs here and there. And I started freelancing for some other casting directors. And then Carol and I were out. She said, "What if you took this client?" And then I said, "Okay, I could do that. And you could do it kind of remotely," she said. "And you could do your work and you could do this and you could kind of do it like that." And I said, "Okay, I'll do that." And then I started doing that, and then I was like, "Oh, right, I really like this." And then I took it, and then, you know, I think it was about 3 years later, and I took over the whole business, and now I am the owner of Selective Casting, and I love it, and feel so grateful to have the business and the work. And you know, it's interesting because the pandemic, how everything has affected my business is really interesting because when the pandemic first started and we were all in lockdown, I was like, that's it. It's over. Like I just went right to an extreme of like, I'll never work again. I will never have jobs again. And then people started thinking, okay, how are we going to shift this work that we do, and how are we going to do it remotely? So I have been doing a lot of remote casting. Like, so I've been doing a lot of, like the last job that Steve did for me was a remote job, and he shot it from his house. And it's just been a crazy learning curve because everything has shifted. It's like, it's not, okay, it's not oftentimes like who is, the best actor for the job. Even it's who has the right equipment, who has the best internet, who has the ability to do this. So it's just been a really am I going on too long? Have I gone on too?
No, it's fascinating.
Oh, okay. So it's just been really it's been really interesting to kind of like do this complete flip. Now live shoots are coming back, so that is a whole nother ballpark of problems or issues and different things, you know, people getting tested, and like you were saying, like, you know, skeleton crews, and the stuff that I'm doing is on a small scale, so, or most of the stuff, you know, like but it's really interesting, you know, just listening to what other people are saying, like how this is like, I think like I was at another reading the other night and I was like, oh wow, you know what works on Zoom is monologues. like monologues seem like a thing of the past to me, you know, like doing a monologue, like because everyone just does sides or scenes, and it actually worked watching a monologue or watching like a one person show I've watched on Zoom, which works. Like buyer and seller works on camera. Um, so it's just interesting, you know, and it's interesting as far as like self-taping goes. I mean, I could go on for like a good hour about it, but I don't know. That's sort of my story and where
Well,
things are at.
it does seem, and again, we had this observation of last week, and I was talking to an actor friend of mine, of ours, Jeff Solomon, and he, you know, he is hearing that they are looking for actors who have the ability to film themselves,
Yeah.
who have some form of a studio
Yep.
to work in. Robin, I know that we had that conversation. I think it was last week or the week before, about the actors who are in a position to do that. Have got a, you know, something of an advantage, which maybe they didn't have before. But
Yep, and I'm working on something now. And like the thing that you worked on, Steve, a lot of times now people don't even want, like I'm looking at Ron's background there. He's got a great background. Like that could be a good back set. You know what I mean? So like I'm having like a callback, right? So that like people we can make sure and part of it is to see what people's background is
yeah,
like, because you're also kind of auditioning like your set, essentially.
yes. Absolutely, and I found during the during the shoot that I did, that the lighting and the arrangement of the camera and all the stuff that, you know, we're on a Zoom call here, and we're all different lighting, different different tone, different, you know, arrangement, and trying to get things to look somewhat uniform, and actually be lit reasonably well, even
Yeah.
though what we did was supposed to be telemedicine. So it was, you know, we were supposed to be on Zoom calls or whatever.
Yeah.
It still has to be not distracting for whoever's going to be viewing the thing. You want
Yeah.
to be viewing the content. So and that's, I mean, it's fascinating. Again, it points at what we were saying, that there's a certain amount of innovation, whether it's technical innovation, whether it's performance innovation, whether it's settings and choosing what to do. There's a certain amount of innovation which has to come out of this situation.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting, you know, because self-tapes were already a thing, but now they're like really a thing.
Yeah,
And like,
the
they're
thing.
the thing. So like, I mean, I've been in, you know, like discussions about like when are we ever going to be able to have a casting session again in New York? Like, when are you going to be able to have a, you know, be calling 40 people, 50 people, whatever, however many people in and like coming into a small space and pairing people up like a husband and wife. I mean, that's a whole other thing. Like, okay, like I had to cast like a daughter and a father. Well, they had to be real and they had to be, you know, it was, there's so many things. And like, you know, like I'm talking to agents and stuff that are, you know, they're like, oh my God, I have to find someone that is a family that has two kids and they have to love sports and they have to, I don't know, you know, these things. So it's, there's so many, it's
And
everyone.
you can't always rely on, you know, every member of the family having an equal level of talent or of I mean, point in fact, we watched the movie Made in Italy the other day with Liam Neeson and his son, and you know, we had great expectations, um, and Liam Neeson was great, which is probably all I should say. But it you know, just on that small scale as well, especially when you're looking for an impact straight away.
Yeah.
You know, that must be very, very tricky.
On a positive note, I've been blown away by people's setups. I mean, just like I now have kind of like a database almost in my brain, um, of people that have like incredible cameras, lights, like have these setups that like, are very, very solid. Like, and you can do it for not. I mean, like you can do it if you have a ring light and a tripod and a good camera iPhone, you're kind of set. That's pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think we're slightly running over time, but I don't want to cut things off if there's more discussion to be had here. So we have Kat and Molly on the line. What I really wanted to do was just call on Kat and Molly if there's any questions or observations that you might have, if you're still with us. If you are, then wave. Oh, there's Kat. Hi, Kat.
Hey, so I just wanted to say this was a real joy to listen to, and I've been doing like a lot of different Zoom classes and listening to stuff like this, and it's been very inspiring, and I just loved hearing you start off saying that it's been mainly positive, because I mean that's what I kind of see in it. But it's very, I'm coming from a music background and everything, so it's very, but I also am a voiceover actress, so it's very interesting to hear the theater and film side of entertainment. And yeah, it just like the rest of the speakers said and everything, there's a time to look within, like, and having all the different setups. I was just on the phone with my band, showing me a new recording device that they got that has superb live quality video and audio. So we're going to be able to go and distance ourselves and record something live. So it's just...
What is it?
Zoom something. I don't know the model yet. She didn't tell me, but it's just really interesting to hear. And the other day, one of my photography friends was telling me of a company that is looking for people who can CGI their face at home, or like add the facial recognition bits. So that they can turn it into an animation. So hearing of all different parts of what people are doing in the industry in all corners of the arts is very interesting. And it's I kind of hesitate to use the word heartwarming, that it seems like everyone's really coming together to support one another in all groups of it. So this conversation for me personally has been very enriching and enlightening. So thank you all for participating and just giving us so much to chew on.
Well, thank you. And we okay, Robert and I have said this before, that when we started this, when Robin approached me about starting this, it was really in the really in the way of it being a support group. It's developed from that, but that was one of the ideas. We knew people were hurting. We thought we'd give them a support group, you know, kind of AA for actors, as it were. And we were anticipating sob stories, and we were thinking we would be actively not trying to avoid that, but you know, we felt we might have to manage those situations, and it really has been overwhelmingly positive. It really has. We got a little chat message up from Molly, saying, "This was great. I am actually a child actor and I've been doing many Zoom auditions. Found this very informative." So thank you very much, Molly. Robin and I have really been informed by this as well, haven't we?
Yeah, and I want to say that, Kat, are you still there?
Yeah, Kat's still there. She's on mute, but she's still there.
Kat, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, yes.
Kat's going to be on our show next week, right?
Yes, I am.
And I met her because she voiced over one of my father's books and is actually still alive after talking to him for hours and hours and hours on how to speak it. That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was fun. And as an aspiring actress, pretty much, it was an enriching experience. And I took it as
directed.
Yes, it was fun.
I was talking to him the other day. He says hi. So are we all set, Steve? Or
I think so. I think it's probably time to let you guys go and have a stiff drink or whatever you feel. One thing that Robin and I have said is we don't know how long this series of things will go. We're booking through into October. If there's an appetite, we'll keep on going. We have said it would be lovely to have people back to chat again as things develop and we see how things are going. See what different perspectives we get over time. So watch this space, and also it would be great to have you back as participants, or join in here, or to watch us on Facebook Live, since that seems to have been a success.
yes,
seems to have been a success. We'll find out. We'll find out from the comments that people are making. I'm glad we've kind of introduced another group to each other again. One thing I will say, Lena, is Kit is a master of the British accent.
Oh,
Absolutely, and she even looks like a doctor.
Oh my God.
Just saying.
I love it. Anyone that's listening or watching, send me your stuff.
So,
Kit, make sure your set looks good.
Oh yeah, you can go to my website, selectivecasting.com. And
That's a good idea.
my email's on there, so that's my direct email.
So, if anybody needs to know anything about Lena, and you forget, just ask me. But thank you, everybody. I'm going to say goodbye. Are you going to say goodbye, Robin?
Say goodbye. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Lena, and thank you, Kit.